Yay. This is Wednesday and it's my favorite day. It really has shaped up to be my favorite day of the week because I love sharing the mindset mantras. And every Wednesday we come together. So this is someone from our mindset community sharing with the community. And I can't wait for you guys to meet the guests today. And again, we have the West Coast meeting the East Coast. And I love that we can do this virtually. So thank you for logging in and taking time to share with us. If you want to introduce yourself, that would be amazing.
Sure. Yeah. No, well, my name is Gabriela Milian and I live on the West Coast. I live in Los Angeles
Yeah.
as a TV reporter, but I am originally from the West or the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing that I always miss home. I was born in New York, but kind of raised all over the place because my dad's in the military. So, that was something that we were used to moving a lot, but we pretty much stayed in the East Coast for the majority of my life.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, deep down, I love storytelling. I love all creative practices. I think that's why I became a TV reporter because that's how I'm lucky enough and able to connect to different people with different stories. And I've had the amazing opportunity of sharing that and being that messenger for people. So that's what I do on a day-to-day, and I absolutely love it. And even this mindset community, I think, is absolutely beautiful. I was telling Alia Alia, I'm sorry.
No,
That,
you're good. You're good. We just met. Like, how are you going to know and remember? It's okay. Don't worry.
but I was telling you earlier that I love, like, I've only really gotten into personal development within the last year and a half. And kind of changing your mindset in so many different ways has helped me, especially during a pandemic that's going on right now. So I totally appreciate you inviting me to this space, and being able to share my story with you guys is really great.
Oh, thank you for saying that and sharing that. That's so sweet of you to share. And we were chatting a little bit before we recorded, and that power of stepping into like really deep self-care. And that means journaling and any kind of meditation, whether it's yoga or your long walks out, staring at the sky. Like that, it's life-changing, isn't it? It really is a pivot for that mind control, I
No,
really.
most definitely. I think that's something that, as a television reporter in particular, that takes up so much of my life. And even though I'm so many other things other than a TV reporter, but because I align with it so much, that industry, it can be very fast paced, very, breaking news heavy. It can be stressful, but also an adrenaline rush. That's a lot of fun too. But even this morning, I had breaking news that I had to cover that I wasn't expecting to cover. And it can be super spontaneous and fun, but also stressful.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
talk to colleagues all the time in the industry that don't have really good self-care practices. And to be quite honest with you, that's probably something that I've only strongly implemented within the last couple of months. I can't even though I've been more into personal development lately, I do think that in a lot of ways, even though the pandemic has been very stressful for a lot of people, I think it's forced me to kind of shut off things that aren't super important or that aren't serving me in my life, to kind of implement new practices that are better for me.
Yep.
So that's something that, no, self-care is super important. And no matter what industry you're in, like, I know a lot of TV reporters or people in the news business, they're like, oh, well, news is 24/7. Like, I don't have time for certain things. And like, no, you have to make time for it or you're just going to burn out and go crazy.
Oh my gosh, girl, I am so glad you're saying all this. You have no idea, because it's that constant reminder. And those who press play and are hearing this, like, evaluate what you're doing right now for self-care. And it just leads me to this conversation. And we never know where the conversations are going to go necessarily, but it leads me to want to just quickly share that that's the beauty of two-word story. It is something that you add to your self-care toolkit. And you can check in with yourself every week and say, what is my two-word story mantra? So you kind of, it's almost like you have to reflect and go within to pick that mantra. How do you want to show up on a week-to-week basis? Maybe it's your life mantra. Maybe it's a yearly mantra. Maybe it's your seasonal mantra or a different one. So every week I do check in with myself, because there's different struggles that pop up, different stressors that pop up week to week. So we don't even have to go further down that road, but it's just such a great reminder, like self-care, self-care, self-care. Sorry. I'm like,
Yes. And
it's
that's probably for a lot of people, that's probably their 2-word story that they're trying to implement right now.
Oh
You
my
know?
gosh, that's such a good point. That's such
Yeah.
a good point. I love that. So, I cannot wait to have you share with everybody. What is your 2-word story?
Sure. So I would say my 2-word story is powerful storytelling.
Love
And
it.
the reason why, I mean, it's obviously something that I have probably connected to my entire life,
Mm,
but more recently, when it comes to self care and taking care of my mindset, I think it also relates to some of the stories I was even telling myself, not
yeah.
necessarily the stories I was sharing with other people or the world, but I started to realize that some of the stories I was telling myself wasn't necessarily healthy for me.
Wow.
And I read in a book, like in a self improvement book recently, that an emotion only lasts 12 seconds, but the story that you attach to it is what lasts a lifetime or what can. So it literally doesn't matter what you're going through. You could be going through a really tragic event, or you could be going through something super duper happy. It's literally that emotion can only physically control you for 12 seconds. And then after that, it's the stories that you attach to it. So, I mean, even recently, I had a really good friend of mine. She lost her mother, sadly. And
I'm sorry.
it was super painful for her. And, it was during this time, it wasn't related to coronavirus, but, it's been during this pandemic and there's been a lot of stresses for a lot of people.
Right.
And when I sent her that quote, and I sent her that quote before I had found out, because her and I are both really into self improvement and self development. I sent her that quote before I found out that her mom had just passed. And later she told me, but she was like, Gabby, thank you so much for sending that to me, because when she first found out that her mom passed away, she was telling herself, like, of course it's super sad and it's a super tragic event that happens in anyone's life, but she was telling herself certain stories like, man, I lost my mom. Who else is going to love me the way that my mom did? How am I supposed to live without my mom? These were all different stories that she was kind of telling herself. And she told me, she was like, if you didn't share that with me, I think I would have continued attaching those stories to the initial emotion that I was feeling after losing my mom. And I was like, I think a lot of things happen for a reason. So, I mean, her and I, we share quotes and stuff with each other all the time. But to know that I literally shared that quote the day after her mom passed away, and she didn't tell me yet because she wasn't ready to tell people,
Sure.
but I sent that to her without knowing.
Right. It's
I
very
was like,
symbolic.
wow, this was meant to be, kind of a deal. And I think hearing that from her also showed me, okay, what are certain things that I need to do? What are stories that I'm telling myself that were attached to maybe an emotion that I even felt as a kid? You know what I mean? Sometimes there are emotions that you feel when the first time you feel that emotion was maybe when you were like 7 or 8 years old. But
Mhm.
then the story that you keep attaching to it is the reason why it's still controlling your life, or the reason why you still have certain thought patterns. So I think it just goes to show that storytelling, and even the stories that you tell yourself, are extremely powerful, both good and bad.
Gosh,
You
this
can
is
be
so
telling
powerful.
Yeah, you could be telling yourself a really bad story for because of a sad or embarrassing, or maybe there are certain stories that I tell friends from, something that happened when I was a kid,
Mhm.
that I kind of joke around about, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this was kind of like super embarrassing, but a funny story." And then I realized, like, wow, that incident when I was a little kid led me to tell myself certain things as I got older. And even though I learned to laugh about it, I think it was still holding me back in certain ways because I kept attaching certain stories to the initial event or feeling. So, yeah, I think that's it. Powerful storytelling is really what resonates with me.
So, like, this was a mic drop for sure. Like if you had a mic, it would be like, "Ooh,"
Oh.
and everyone's like, "Oh." That's how I feel. As you were talking, I literally, my mind started to go to like, okay, what stories do I need to shut down? Like, it's really a
Yeah.
very simple way of thinking about it, but then a very powerful way. And that mantra, powerful storytelling, it's that, oh, I get the chills because it like stops you in your tracks. Like you easily, our minds so easily can go down that negative rabbit hole, right? Like so quickly. Powerful storytelling. I need to, how am I going to shift this out of this weakness of negativity or fear, or and then pivot it? Like, how can I make myself feel more empowered? How can I gain my power back from this story that I'm thinking I should be attaching to myself, right? It's like, it is just so incredible that you're sharing this for all of us. I can't thank you enough. It's so
No,
powerful.
I'm so happy because I think that's something that the more I read about your mind, and even like physically and scientifically, like
Mhm.
your brain is really only meant to, like, we still have these kind of evolutionary, like caveman like brains that are really just wired to keep us safe and to protect us.
Mhm.
So it's not easy. It's not easy to rewire certain stories because in a way, maybe some of these bad stories that were toxic were protecting you. And in certain ways, maybe they were protecting you from being more vulnerable with people. Maybe they were protecting you from feeling that an initial feeling you were feeling with whatever situation you're going through, from
Yeah.
feeling it again. And I think that's something that it really is, you really have to put certain practices, whether it's journaling, whether it's,
Mhm.
figuring out what your 2-word story is and putting certain mantras to help you get out of a tough place. It really is something you have to do consistently. And I struggle with it too. Even though this is my 2-word story, there are definitely stories in my head that I probably have to rewire and retell to myself or even just delete completely,
Right.
in order to be a better person and in order to show up better, not just for myself, but other people.
Right.
And I think it's hard. It's definitely not easy, but I think once you put certain practices in, it's so worth it.
Oh, yes. This was so needed. And I can't say it enough. I'm so grateful that you came through with these important nuggets of information and this powerful mantra. And what I do like to suggest is that you guys write, if you're listening and with us here, write this mantra in your journal. And free journaling is what allows you to come to a 2-word story a lot of times. So if you ask yourself, what is my 2-word story you don't know just yet? Just unleash what's going on in here. Just start free journaling. I'm feeling this way. And no judgment. Let your heart and your mind pour out on that paper, or maybe you type it on your computer, and think about this beautiful, beautiful, powerful storytelling, right? Like, what stories are you telling yourself? How are you showing up for yourself? Do you show up in a confident way? Are you showing up in a more, low self-esteem? Wherever you feel like you're grabbing a hold of something that could not be elevating your vibration to a higher positive state, you have the power to change it. You really do. And this is such a beautiful reminder of that. So thank you, Gabby.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so glad that, honestly, this is something I love, just the whole mission that 2-word story is going after. And I think it's super helpful. And I know that I think journaling in particular, it's something that I've only been doing consistently for about a year.
Mhm.
And that's just one way. There are so many other methods to kind of get closer to it. But what I realized personally after journaling, there was a friend of mine that said, "Oh, you've been journaling for a year. Why don't you like retype it or like just look back at your journal entries?" And I remember when I first started journaling, I thought it was just like word vomit on a page. Like, I didn't think it was going anywhere. I didn't think it had any type of flow or that it really even made sense. And then when I look back at some of my old entries, and some of them I even retyped just to kind of like remember what was going on at that time, I
Yeah.
was like, wow, there's actually correlations and relations to pretty much that entire year of journal entries that I had there
Ooh,
were definitely 2-word stories that went throughout the
absolutely.
all of them.
Oh
So
my gosh.
it's
And
super important.
I tend to have not a great memory, truly. And what I found is once I did start incorporating a journal practice, and I might have a week I journal only twice. It doesn't have to be daily. It doesn't have to be, grab it when you're feeling like, oh, I'm kind of in a funk right now, or oh, I really need to check in with myself. Like, but the memory, my memory is way better. I mean, I'm sure there's a link to when you're writing these things down, they stick with you. So I can think clearly as to what happened last July 4th, whereas before I would have been like, oh, I forget who we were with, and you know what I mean? It's like a
Mhm.
really way to stay intentional with yourself and your life and all those things. So, oh my gosh, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate
Hours
it.
with you. You are fabulous.
Thanks. No, I really appreciate it. And definitely, if anybody wants to reach out to me or see some of my stories, if you're on the West Coast in the LA area, feel free to follow me on social media at ABC7 Gabriela. And honestly, I answer all of my DMs. Probably I shouldn't, but I answer pretty much everyone. So if you slide into my DMs, I'll answer you if you want to talk about anything. But this is definitely something that's super important, and I love what you're doing.
Yes, thank you so much. And I will include all of your information. And you are just a breath of fresh air. So by all means, guys, follow and support. And we're really, we say this all the time, but we're all in this together. Can we be kind, lead with love, and powerful storytelling?
Yes.
Remember that. All right, bye guys. Sending love.